Now in the terminal, we can see that our React app is successfully initialized, and we can see this directory is now very populated with a lot of different folders and things, goodies to see here. So right now we're not in that directory, so let's go into my app and then run npm start, and that's going to boot up the web service or the web app. And here we can see that, wow, lo and behold, we've got a simple React app going for us. And there's a hyperlink to the React page where you can learn more about how one would go about using React, which is a very popular JavaScript framework. And yeah, so let's see. This website is probably not what we want. So let's actually use React in the way that it was kind of created for, which is that this sort of web app can update its DOM, or document object model, in response to changes in state. So could you help me add a button that shows the number of times it's pressed to my React app? So let's see if ChatGPT can come up with something like that. Like, we want a feature for a website, like we know what we want, but we're gonna ask ChatGPT to help us out. And sure enough, it does say it'd be happy to help us. So let's open the React app's app.js file and import the useState hook from the React library. So that's pretty straightforward. If we go ahead and copy that code, it's got a home write-up. So it was basically saying to go into app.js here, and it's going to ask us to add an extra import statement. And that's going to be right there. And then we're going to want to declare a state variable to keep track of the number of times the button has been pressed. So that's going to actually go right here. And then we're going to want to add this to our website. So here we can see that the file has a sort of very similar structure to what we saw in our HTML. And sure enough, that's actually what this is. But we're going to go ahead and add some extra stuff in here. So we're going to copy paste that div, which is an HTML element. And if we go back to our page, we can actually see that there's a button here and this text that says you've pressed the button 0 times. So this useState hook from React that we imported up here is actually going to give us these two constants, or count and set count. This is going to be a function that updates the value, and this is going to be the value itself. But every time we press that button on the click event, it's going to basically set count to increment the current value of count. So if we actually click this button, whoa, we can see that that counter up here is actually going up every single time that I click on it. I don't know if you can hear me clicking, but I am. I'm not lying to you. But yeah, so we can see that this is pretty useful. This is like, we just came up with some random idea and we wanted it to show up on our website, and sure enough, it did. So the reason that we're on React, by the way, is that earlier we were just given some bare bones HTML, and this HTML, like I said earlier, is kind of like the bones or skeleton of your website. The CSS, as they said, is kind of like the styling. So how do I make it look beautiful, right? And then finally, the JavaScript is like the brains behind it. So it's what actually makes it move and be interactive, things like that. So this stuff is all in JavaScript. It's just returning HTML elements with a little bit of extra functionality. So the only thing now we're missing other than HTML and JavaScript is actually CSS. So let's ask ChatGPT, could you make that button blue? Let's just say blue. Sure, you can easily change the button color by adding a style attribute to the button element. Here's an example of how you can make that button. So it's going to presumably give me some code. So this is exactly what we've got before. We've got this app function. This is something we've already kind of brought into our app. And here we can see the difference in what they told us before, right? So earlier we had a button element that specified an on-click behavior. Here it has an on-click behavior in addition to a style. So if we actually copy that and bring that into our code, so let's actually make that look just as it looked on its response, even though you don't really have to. Oops, I think I am missing a curly brace there. I didn't copy a curly brace here. That was on me. But if we had copied that correctly, that's what it would have looked like. And if I go over here, oh, sure enough, my button is now blue. Maybe not the prettiest blue you've ever seen, but I'm sure you could continue the conversation with ChatGPT to try to get it to more of what you want. So maybe we could even ask, could you make that a lighter blue? So like, yeah, it's really just treat ChatGPT as this sort of conversational format, and it'll kind of like evolve throughout the conversation because it accumulates more and more context about what you want. So on the left here, you can actually see that you can start new chats, and it doesn't actually preserve memory between chats. So if you want it to kind of hold context on what you told it before, make sure it's in the same chat. So here, let's see what, this is kind of interesting, right? Like, let's see what ChatGPT thinks is a lighter blue. So if we go ahead and copy that, we can see what it actually thinks. Like how much, it's curious, right? Like how much lighter is it going to be? So if we bring that in here, I accidentally removed one of those angle brackets there. But if we save that and come back here, honestly, in my opinion, that's a little more purple, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. But yeah, so you can kind of go back and forth. Like once you've got an idea, right, you just ask ChatGPT how you're going to do that, and it's going to give you an answer. Maybe not the best answer as we saw here. I mean, I'm sure that's a little blue in some ways, but basically what we got from that is that we can actually use a value that's not the string representation of the color blue itself, right? So we can actually use this sort of hexadecimal specification for a color. If you're familiar with the computer representation of color, there's RGB, red, green, and blue, and the hexadecimal digits specify the intensity of each of those color channels. So one thing we can take away with that is we can kind of tinker around with that color and tweak it until we get a color that we want, or we can use some online resource. And yeah, this kind of shows us the power of ChatGPT to generate code for us.